Most of the time when we talk about Tesla's advantages, we all start to hear similar things, right? Well, it's simple. Tesla is leading in the EV space because they provide the most amount of range for the lowest price, and the competition just simply can't catch up. Well, it might be a little bit more complicated than that in 2021. As a running thesis, yeah, in general, overall, longest range for the best possible price probably makes sense for Tesla's lead, but in the crossover segment, which is a very, very popular one in the United States, Model Y has some pretty stiff up-and-coming competition. So in today's video, I'm not going to be listing every single Model Y competitor, just a couple that I think are fairly noteworthy, and of course I'm going to miss something, so feel free to add in some other competitors they may have. But for one, the Ford Mach-E, which is Ford's first attempt at making the Mustang into a four-door crossover. A lot of Mustang fans not too happy about it, but a lot of electric vehicle fans pretty interested into seeing Ford bring so much of their muscle car design to a larger vehicle, and also going with a very Tesla style aesthetic on the interior with two fairly large displays. The one thing I cannot stand about the Mach-E though is that little dial on the center of the display. I don't know, all the points of having a screen, in my opinion, come down to being able to change it and make it a variable so that whether you want to watch movies on it, look at maps, or type, the display can alter and change itself to whatever you need. So putting a big physical dial in the center kind of throws me off, but design aesthetic wise, I've certainly seen a lot of people prefer the Mach-E's beauty over the Tesla Model Y, and it certainly has captivated a somewhat sizable market as the Mach-E sales have sold out, and Ford appears to be taking precautions on deliveries because initially they were supposed to start at the end of 2020, but now they have been pushed into 2021 because Ford wants to make sure that quality control is on top of things, and apparently a lot of the first Mach-E's that are being built have actually had a few quality control issues. So Tesla is probably the type of company to just deliver them anyway and say we'll fix them later with service appointments, but Ford at least appears to be the company that's like, well, there's some quality control issues, so we're going to postpone deliveries. So people are still waiting on their Mach-E, but starting price for the Mach-E is around $43,000, and it qualifies for the $7,500 federal tax credit. So that's something the Model Y currently does not qualify for, and the EPA estimated range for the Mach-E is 230 miles for the cheapest rear-wheel drive option, which is not great, but standard range Model Y at $42,000 is not terribly better at 244 miles. So for basic driving, it's going to be fine. Obviously, it just means a bit more stopping on road trips. Another, I think, very compelling alternative to the Model Y is the VW ID4, which once again, for their first edition, it's sold out, but they do have a ID4 Pro variant, which they're still taking reservations for. Deliveries for that should be mid-2021. And this one will apparently go 250 miles on a charge, according to the EPA, and still qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit, which gives it quite the advantage over the Model Y if you consider the range is technically a little bit further and the price is technically a bit lower than the standard range Model Y. So some things you might have to put up with those lower prices are the user interface and the displays not being quite as immersive, and the software certainly, in my opinion, looks a lot more clunky and a lot less fluid than what you might get on the Mach-E. And when it comes to software and UI being up to date, I feel like the Model Y is by far the leader because of how many over-the-air updates Teslas get, and in my opinion, the ID4's weak point is most likely going to be its software. But when it comes to range and affordability, ID4 seems like a fairly compelling option for a lot of people. And another one that I believe has already entered the market is the Hyundai Kona electric crossover, which should get a range even higher than that at 258 miles, and the starting price is around $38,000, and yes, once again, still qualifies for the federal tax credit. Though the thing to keep in mind with all of these non-Tesla electric crossovers is a lot of them you have to go through dealers to buy, which means that the official pricing on them might be a little bit more, but once you factor in the tax credit and everything, I still think it's safe to say the Model Y has some electric crossover competition in the United States market that can technically undercut it and get better range. Of course, it's kind of just a rounding estimate when all these numbers are so close together, but does this mean Tesla is doomed, or the Model Y is in trouble, or the Model Y is not going to succeed? Not at all. In fact, in my opinion, the Model Y still has quite a clear advantage over all of them simply because Tesla is likely playing the EV game a bit more more safe with profitability, whereas these other brands are most likely focused a bit more on just proving to the market, yes, we can make a compelling electric car. We know how to do EVs, you know, we can utilize Electrify America, but when it comes to how profitable are these vehicles, I bet the Model Y wins by a long shot between all of the casting press technologies they've incorporated into this vehicle, how many parts it shares with the Model 3. There's been lots of evidence to suggest that the Model Y is actually cheaper to build than the Model 3, but they get to just charge that extra premium, of course, because it has the powered hatchback and it's a larger vehicle overall. So Tesla gets to keep that profit. And the other issues you may notice between the Kona, the ID4, and the Mach-E, they all have much larger batteries. In fact, most of these vehicles have batteries equal to the long-range Model Y, some of them even more so, between 75 to 80 kilowatt hour battery packs, and yet those larger batteries are only going around 250 miles on a charge. We don't know exactly what the battery size is on the standard range Model Y, but my guess is it must be pretty close to the standard range battery on the Model 3, and that would likely put it a little bit below 70 kilowatt hours, and because Teslas have the most energy efficient powertrains, that's why even though the range might not be the highest number at 244 miles, it's probably making the most with what it has, and that may not seem like a big deal. It's like, well, who cares if the Model Y costs more? At the end of the day, that's what matters. But the truth is, batteries are by far the most expensive part of an electric vehicle. So whichever car is able to go the furthest with the smallest battery pack, that one is probably going to be the most profitable to sell, especially if it's 42K, which prices it above vehicles like the Hyundai Kona or vehicles like the ID4. That means that Tesla is probably securing a thick enough profit margin that they can continue to mass produce this vehicle at extreme scale, whereas other companies like Ford with the Mach-E are being somewhat limited with their production numbers, or with VW and the ID4, they're like, well, we're sold out on the first edition, so you're going to have to wait for the next shipment because it's going to take us some time to actually fill in on all these orders. So I'm not saying everybody's going to be production constrained, but my guess is Tesla is going to be able to build the most amount of Model Ys compared to all of its competitors, even if the range isn't quite as good or the price isn't quite as low. But either way, I think this would be an interesting video because we oftentimes say the same thing of just like Teslas go the furthest and they're the cheapest, whereas in reality it seems like there is actually quite a few cheaper alternatives with great range, but of course they're not going to be rocking all the amazing advantages that a Tesla sets itself apart from the competition with. Things like autopilot and full self-driving, the technology and software truly I think is groundbreaking and next generation with a Tesla, that with things like the Mach-E and the ID4 you may get some autonomous driving features, but you're never going to get that possibility of a level 4 or level 5 autonomous driving software being installed in an over-the-air update. Also, of course, the supercharger network is a huge advantage because no other charger network in the US can compete with how many supercharger stalls there are or the peak charging rates the Model Y has. And hey, out of all of these, the Model Y, I'm pretty sure, is the only one to have the 7-seater option. But yeah, 7-seater is probably not a great idea for anyone. Now that they've actually been making deliveries recently, we've seen that basically if you're over 5'7", you can't really fit in the back seat. So they're definitely made for kids. But even then, if you're buying an electric crossover and you have kids and you need more seats, then how long are your kids gonna stay below 5'7"? Because after that, the head starts poking through the glass. So either way, it's an option the Model Y has that the others don't. And I think the software, the autonomous driving capabilities, and the supercharging network absolutely justify the standard range Model Y out of the rest of the electric crossovers in the market. Though of course I am biased, I'm a Tesla fanboy. Personally, I think the Model Y is just the most futuristic out of all of them, but I'm sure many of you disagree. The Mach-E is still a very beautiful vehicle, as is the ID4, and they have very compelling battery tech inside them. So I'm curious, what do you guys think out of the EVs we talked about today? Which one would you go with? What did I miss? I'm sure there's a few electric crossovers I didn't bring up, so feel free to let me know. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.